All right, we're in open court in the State versus Stanley Liggins matter, FECR 147696. All counsel are present along with Mr. Liggins. We're outside the presence of the jury, but in open court. I understand that we needed to make a record on one of the transcripts.
Yes, Your Honor. Regarding Lloyd Eston, proposed exhibit 513. Proposed exhibit 513 was also introduced in the 1995 trial as State's Exhibit 131, and Mr. Eston was deemed unavailable in the middle of his 1993 testimony, and a portion, or actually his entire deposition was read in, subject to redactions that the parties made at that time. Mostly, I think, hearsay and things about what his wife said or saw. So that was the proposed exhibit that was filed, which was the exact one used in 1995, and that actually was affirmed by the Supreme Court on appeal. But there are some items similar to what we've been redacting in other transcripts that I would propose we do in this one to make it flow, and also objections that were sustained or overruled.
All right.
Beginning at on page 536. At line 13, there was an objection. Well, he started the answer at line 13. There's an objection. That was overruled. So I would propose taking out lines 13 through 21 or 20. There.
Through 20.
20.
And then there's two questions in a row. Because line 12 is why not, referring to why he didn't stop. So,
Well, how about 12 through 20?
okay. Yes.
That works for you, Mr. Holly?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
On page, also on page 536, starting on line 24, he starts a sentence, "My wife suggested, why don't you stop?" Going on to page 537, there actually was a comment. Now that's hearsay by both lawyers. That's discussed by the court and stricken. So I think beginning at line 24 with "my wife suggested, why don't you stop?" And then on line 537,
Page 537.
excuse me, page 537, lines 1 through 7.
Any objection to it?
Oh, Your Honor.
All right.
Page 538. At line 3, there's an examination regarding some pictures, Exhibit 43 and 44. There's an objection. There's a bench conference. And then at page 539, the offer of those exhibits was withdrawn and they were never re-offered with this witness. So I would suggest on page 538 taking out lines 3, the rest of the page, line 25.
Any objection to that?
No,
All right.
but I think he's continuing on to page 539, is that right?
Yes, lines 1 and 2.
All the way to line 22 on 539.
1 and 2, Your Honor, just the first two.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
1 and 2.
1 and 2, all right.
On page 540, beginning at line 6, there's a discussion about marking Exhibit 2. It's not clear from the record whether that actually was ever done. The original Exhibit 2 that I've sent a picture to the defense does not appear to have an X anywhere that I can see other than one by Dennis Kern. So the witness, the reader, would not be placing an X anywhere on the exhibit.
What about lines 3 and 4 on that page?
But it does refer to a sidebar, so I think 3 through 5 should be deleted.
Any objection to that?
Well, it's tied into the, and I apologize for my voice, I've got a bit of a cold, so if I'm not projecting, please holler. But it's tied into the questioning that begins, well, that's to the last line of page 539, where Mr. McKendrick says, "Excuse me, could I have the witness mark where he just identified the car being parked?" Mr. Davis then says he's disoriented. Then there's the "may we approach." The problem is that the record's not clear on the X, which happens after the sidebar. I mean, that's what the testimony is, whether the X was there or not. Just means that the record wasn't that clear, but the testimony's there. So my point is, I don't see how we don't keep the following discussion about the X. And if that's the case, then I think we need to keep up to line 3, Mr. Davis's response to Mr. McKendrick.
Well, then I would suggest just taking out 4 and 5.
Right.
Okay.
Because then it would read okay.
So just 4 and 5.
Page,
Go ahead.
on page 542, lines 13 through 16, there's an objection in a bench conference. So I would suggest taking out lines 13 through 16.
Any issue with that?
13 through 16, no.
All right.
Page 543, starting at line 2, there's an objection. The objection is overruled. Then he's advised to answer the question. I think we can delete lines 2 through 8.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
544, again, page 544, line 17 through 21 is an objection that's overruled. Just deleting 17 through 21.
No objection.
All right.
And then on 545, just beginning with the 18, where they're done with the witness and the next witness is called.
No objection.
Anything else we need to do before we bring the jury in?
Your Honor, there is a deletion in the middle of a sentence. If I could just have a minute
Sure.
to get the reader to point that out.
I actually have something on page 540,
All right. Page 540.
and it's lines 19 through 22. That it was a question by Mr. Davis, did you happen to go back to that site? And then he withdrew it. So I think 19 through 22 should be deleted.
No objection.
All right.
Then the other question, the proposed exhibit also has the portions of the deposition. Am I correct, Mr. Walton? Or is it just the testimony we just looked at?
No, it should be the deposition. It's part of the deposition, too.
And it's part of the exhibit. And it's been substantially redacted. And what I'm wondering is if we should make sure that the redactions that were prepared in mine are the same as the redactions that the state tends, so we don't have any issues when we're doing the reading. Mike, if I could, I'll just go through.
Yeah.
Well, they had a different copy in the file, so I just want to make sure. And I don't think there's a problem with making a record on it real quick with the lines. So in page 3, line 6 is deleted. And Mr. Walton, if you would, just tell me if you disagree with any of these.
Okay.
Also on page 3, line 17 through 20 inclusive, and line 21, the first phrase, I'm sorry to hear that, is struck out. Page 4, lines 21 through 22, again, are deleted. Line 5, line 14, 3 words, getting was killed, are deleted.
You said line 5, so you mean page 5, line 14.
That is exactly what I meant. Sorry about flipping those. Page 5, line 14, the 3 words getting was killed in the sentence are deleted. Page 7, 25, line 25, and it's entirely flowing onto page 8, lines 1 through 6 are deleted. And then at lines, also on page 8, lines 23 through 25 22. And a portion of 22. The last portion of 22 are the two words "my wife," and then the entirety of 23, 24, 25 are deleted. Flowing over to page 9, line 1 is deleted. On page 9, beginning at page 12, line 12, I'll get that straight. The last two words of line 12, "and losing," and then lines 13 through 25 inclusive. Flowing over to page 10, line 1s through 17 are also redacted. Page 11, lines 22 through 25. Are redacted. Page 12, line 1 is redacted. Page 12 also. You have line 10 redacted. That is page 12. Okay, so that's fine. Page 13, line 22. The phrase "I don't know" is in the remainder of 22 and lines 23 through 25. Flowing over to page 14, 1 through 2 were redacted. Page 15, lines 1 and 2 were redacted, and 3 through 9. Page 15, line 10, the first two words "all right" in line 10 were redacted. Lines 19 through 25 on page 15 were redacted. Flowing into line 1 on page 16, also redacted. Page 17, lines 21 through 25 are redacted. And the entirety of page 18 is redacted. That's what I have.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Wilton?
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything else?
I guess the only question I would have is when it comes to the deposition, if that was a defense deposition, whether Mr. Hawbaker wants to read the defense questions, or I would continue to read that as if it was a direct, and then Mr. Davis at page 15 also had some questions.
I think we have to read them in the roles that they were in the deposition, so I would have to read the questions in the deposition at the beginning.
All right. Anything else before we bring the jury in?
You just need a minute with the reader to advise him of the...
All right, go ahead.
All rise for the jury, please.
Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your patience again. We're ready to start the trial. Mr. Walton and Ms. Walton, have you called your first witness?
Your Honor, the state calls John Gross to the stand. Come forward and be sworn, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I have a seat right over here.
Tell us your name, please.
John Gross, Gross.
John, John.
Yes.
Are you retired?
Yes, I am.
Where are you retired from?
I'm retired from the Davenport Police Department.
What did you do for the Davenport Police Department?
I was a uniform officer for a while, and I also worked undercover in the street crime vice narcotics.
When did you begin working for the Davenport Police Department?
In 1976,
When did you stop working for the Davenport Police Department?
2006.
Will you briefly review for us your training, education, and experience in law enforcement?
Yes, once I got hired by the Davenport Police Department, I went through the academy for Iowa to become qualified, and also I took a DEA school for drugs.
And you told it when you first started the Davenport Police Department, you were in the patrol division.
Correct.
Then at some point, did you move to a different division?
Yes, I moved to the street crime / vice narcotics in 1988.
How long were you in street crimes, vice narcotics?
8 years.
So you were done in 1996.
Yes.
Will you tell us what your duties were as street crimes, vice narcotics officer?
In street crime, we worked undercover unit to check for any activity that happened in the street that was illegal. And we also worked vice narcotics, which we would work reference drug activity and other vice activity.
In that division, did you work with confidential sources?
Yes.
And tell us just what you mean by a confidential source.
Our confidential source were people that would come in that would want to assist the police department, which, for instance, in the vice unit, they would help us make drug buys so we could work a case against defendants.
During your time at the Davenport Police Department, did you work with a confidential source named Wanda Faye Hughes?
Yes.
Did she use the name Wanda Faye Hughes as a confidential source?
No.
What name did she use?
She used Lisa Davis.
What years did Wanda Faye Hughes work as a confidential source for the Davenport Police Department?
She worked with me from, I believe it was 93 to 95.
And you were, is the word handler, or what sort of phrase would you use with regard to your using Wanda Faye Hughes as a confidential source?
Yes, I would have been her handler.
What does that mean?
That means that anything she did would have to go through me, be approved through me.
While Wanda Faye Hughes was working as a confidential source, did you have any idea that she was a witness or in any way connected to the Stanley Liggins case?
No, I did not.
So Wanda Hughes, did she ever tell you she was connected to the Stanley Liggins case in any way?
No.
Did anyone in the Davenport Police Department working on the Stanley Liggins case, did they ever tell you that Wanda Faye Hughes was connected to the case as a witness?
No.
Don Schaefer never told you?
No.
Kevin Murphy never told you?
No.
Bill Davis never told you?
No.
No one involved in that investigation informed you that Wanda Faye Hughes was connected to the Stanley Liggins case?
That's correct.
Did anyone ever ask you to give money to Wanda Fay Hughes with regard to the Stanley Liggins case?
No.
Did you yourself ever tell anyone connected to the Stanley Liggins investigation that Wanda Hughes wasn't informed, a confidential source?
No.
I have no further questions. These attorneys may have questions for you.
Mr. Lawbacre?
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you give her money during the course of your relationship with her, though, as an informant?
For the use as a CS and the drug activity?
And did she do controlled buys for you?
Yes.
Do you know how many controlled buys she did for you?
No, I couldn't give you an exact number.
More than one?
Correct, over, we'll say, a 2-year period.
Over 10, 20?
I would just be guessing, but I would say at least 10.
Okay. And do you know how many controlled buys she had done when she was working with, I believe it was the Metropolitan Enforcement Group?
No, I was not aware.
Did you know that she was working with the Metropolitan Enforcement Group?
Yes.
And in fact, had you been in touch with her handler there?
Yes.
Okay. And so when it comes to sharing information about who informants are, at some point you have to let other law enforcement know that that's your informant, in this case when it was turned over to you, correct?
Well, that was the only point I had from her handler and Meg. Otherwise, we didn't exchange information with other officers.
Okay. And even though she went by Elisa Davis, you knew her name to be Wanda Hughes, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have anything else, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No redirect, thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
At this time, Your Honor, pursuant to previous order of the court, we propose reading the sworn testimony of Lloyd Eston from trial in 1993 and a deposition in 1992. That will be read by Errol Walker of the Davenport Police Department.
All right, Exhibit 513 is submitted. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lloyd Eston, called as a witness by the state, being first duly sworn by the court, was examined and testified as follows. Mr. Eston, please tell me your full name.
Lloyd Eston,
Spell your last name.
E-S-T-O-N,
Mr. Eston, how many years young are you?
76,
Are you retired?
retired,
How long have you been retired?
4 years,
What did you do before you retired?
construction laborer,
Right here in the Quad Cities?
right,
How long have you lived here in the Quad Cities?
35 years,
How long have you lived at your present address?
about 27 years.
I understand that you lost your wife a few years ago.
2 years ago, coming September the 7th.
September 17th of 1990, you still had your wife with you, didn't you?
Yes, I did,
And in fact, you and she were together that day, were you not?
right.
How do you go home?
I drive home.
What streets do you use?
There are several ways that I can go. I go Marquette down to 12th and cut down through the blacktop, the small road.
Do you recall on September 17th, 1990, now that date doesn't mean anything to you,
No,
but do you remember in the year 1990 going home with your wife and seeing a vehicle?
yes, I do.
Do you remember what time of day it was?
Between 8:15 and 8:30.
And where was this vehicle?
The vehicle was parked on the right side of the road below Jefferson School.
Were your headlights on?
Yes, they were.
Was it dark out?
Yes, it was.
And what were you able to see?
See the man standing there with his trunk open and the car door open.
Was the man facing you?
No, he was not.
Were you able to see the man?
Just an image of him.
Could you tell what race he is?
No, that I could not.
Did you stop?
No, I did not.
Directing your attention to line 21. Why didn't you stop?
Why didn't I stop? I just thought someone was parked alongside of the road with a lot of times they normally do. That's the reason I did not stop.
Directing your attention to page 537, line 8. You have since lost your wife?
Yes.
Do you remember exactly what she told you then? It calls for a yes or no.
Yes, I believe I do.
Never mind though. Did you proceed on home after you went by and saw that car there?
Yes, I did.
Did police officers come to you at a later time?
They came to me at a later time while I was fishing.
A few days later?
Yes.
Caught you fishing.
Caught me fishing.
And did you tell them what you saw?
Yes, I did.
Did they ask you to take a look at a car?
Right.
Directing your attention to page 539, line 3. Mr. Eston, I'm going to show you something for the very first time, State's Exhibit 2. And since you've lived in Davenport these 35 years, can you orient yourself to this and tell us what the streets are?
This is the Blacktop Road.
Still use the microphone.
This is coming off Marquette, and that's coming around to the Blacktop Road, comes up to 10th Street.
Show the jury and name the streets, the route that you took that night.
Came off Marquette, which is right here, turned by Jefferson School, came right up here and took this Blacktop Road and went around the corner up to 10th Street onto 9th and Half Street.
Tell the jury using State's Exhibit 2 where it is that you saw that car parked, and also point out where the car was parked on the road or off the road or where exactly it was.
This is the school right here. It seems like right about in here.
You know the area better than I do.
Excuse me, could I have the witness mark where he just identified the car being parked?
He's disoriented. Now, before we go any further, our State's Exhibit 2, if you could, get a pen here, a marker, hang on to it for me.
I have it.
Now you put an X where you just showed the jury that you saw the car.
Right in here.
Now where's 12th Street on here for you?
Let's see. That's 12th. Here, coming around here, flying right around, and then comes over here to this little blacktop that runs off into that. And this blacktop runs around the corner, and then you turn to 10th Street.
The day after you saw the car?
Yes.
Now the next day, is that when the police found you fishing?
This was 2 or 3 days afterwards.
2 or 3 days after the police find you fishing?
That's right.
Did you go back to the scene with them?
No, I did not.
Okay, did you go back?
I did not go back.
How is your memory these days?
Fair.
I'm sorry.
Pretty good.
Do you remember what happened 2.5 years ago?
Not all. I can't remember. No.
Did you go back to the scene, or do you remember?
I did not go back to the scene.
Have the police officers asked you to view a vehicle?
What's that?
The police officers ask you to take a look at a car?
They did that.
Before they did that, did you describe what the car looked like?
Yes, I did.
What does it look like?
It's a red car. It had 4 doors. It looks like a foreign car.
The car that you saw that night, what kind of car was it?
A foreign car.
The car that the police officer showed you, had you seen it before?
Yes.
Directing your attention to line 17. Mr. Eston?
Yes, sir.
This is proposed exhibit 95. Seen that photograph or one like it?
One like it.
Is that what you were shown by the police officers?
Right.
Do you recognize that as a car that was in the photographs that were shown before? Directing your attention to line 543, line 9.
Yes.
You've seen it before?
I seen one like it.
One car or one picture?
I seen one picture like that.
And what is this picture of?
Looks like the Peugeot.
Is this picture or the picture that the police officer showed you?
It looks like the pictures the police officer showed me.
Is that the same car in it?
I'm not going to say positive that it is.
Does it look like it?
It does look like it, yes.
Do you see anything different?
No, it doesn't.
You can't positively say.
I can't positively say.
Can you distinguish it in any way?
No.
Had you ever seen the car in the photograph before?
No, but I've seen that car in the photograph before.
The car that's in this photograph?
Yes.
Had you ever seen it before you saw this photograph?
No.
Mr. Eston, this is State's Exhibit 63. Now, it's a little bigger and some landmarks here to get your bearings. State's Exhibit 63, do you recognize any buildings in that particular exhibit?
No, not exactly.
Would you start at this side and look across? If you recognize anything, tell us.
Is this Jefferson School?
No, I can't tell you.
I'm a poor map reader. No, I can't tell exactly.
You can't look at this and tell where you are?
No, I can't.
When you went down that street that night and saw the car,
Right?
see any fires?
I never see any fire.
Nothing further.
I have no cross-examination, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, did you want to continue your side on the deposition?
Yes, from the deposition from 1992, sir, I direct you to page 3, line 7. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Lloyd Eston?
All right, and is your last name spelled E-S-T-O-N?
Uh-huh.
How old are you, Mr. Eston?
75.
And when is your birthday?
November the 14th, 1916.
Directing you to line 21. The information that I received indicated that you contacted the police sometime after September 17th, 1990 concerning something you had seen. Is that right?
I didn't contact them myself. Someone else did. Not me, no.
Do you know who contacted the police?
No, I do not.
But the police came and took you.
Police came. I was down on the bank fishing.
Were you down on the bank fishing?
Yeah.
Down here on the levee downtown?
No, I was down on that Credit Island. No, 280 Bridge.
And the police found you down there?
Detectives.
Wanted to talk to you? Do you remember who the police officer was that wanted to talk to you?
No, but the detective was Schaefer.
It was Detective Schaefer?
Yeah, I was down there right back fishing.
Direct you to line 23. And they indicated that Detective Schaefer wanted to talk to you about something, is that right?
Yes, they did.
Did they talk to you down there while you were fishing, or did they have you come up to the police station?
Well, they didn't say very much down there. They come up to the police station.
And did you do that right away that day?
Yeah, I followed them up.
Okay. Do you know what day that was they came and talked to you?
Not exactly. No, I do not.
What did they ask you about?
They asked me about a car and about the little girl over there by Jefferson School.
Okay.
I live over by Jefferson School. My kids went to school there, and they just asked me if I had seen a car at that.
Is that 920 West 9.5 Street? Is that where you live?
Uh-huh.
And you still live there?
Yes, I do.
The information that I got indicates that you told the police that you had gone to the Kmart store on that evening of September 17, 1990. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Wife and I went to the store.
Do you know which Kmart it was you went to?
Davenport.
The one up in Northwest Davenport?
The one in Northwest Davenport.
Do you remember how you drove up there, what route you took?
Not exactly. Well, we always most generally keep the same route. If I'm not mistaken, we went up Warren, I believe it was, and we came back through by Jefferson School.
Came back by Jefferson School?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember what time you were coming back that night?
I would say between 8:15, 8:30, somewhere along in there, I guess, I believe.
Now, as I understand it, you told the police that somewhere along there on the way back, you saw a car parked with the doors open. Is that right?
On the right-hand side, yes.
Do you remember where that car was parked at?
Pretty well.
Where was that?
On the right-hand side right, there's straightaway road there, and it was parked on the right about a couple hundred feet. I imagine down from the highway where the building, what's the place called? Friendly House? They're building a new Friendly House along there now.
So the place where the car was parked was a couple hundred feet farther
I would imagine, just roughly.
down from where they're building the new Friendly House.
It's right along in the vicinity because that takes in quite a place here, or quite a place there.
How far away from that is Jefferson School?
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't have no idea. That is on, I wouldn't want to say, couldn't pinpoint it,
Directed to page 8, line 7. And this car you say was parked right along the curb?
No, there's no curb there.
Okay, the car was just parked right alongside the road.
Parked along there. There's an opening there.
Was it still on the roadway or was it pulled off the roadway?
It was kind of pulled off the roadway, just a little, I believe.
And what was it that you saw about that car? What attracted your attention to it?
Well, the trunk was up and there was a man behind it and standing kind of over from the license plate on the left-hand side.
Directed to page 9, line 2. You indicated you saw a man standing behind it
Yes,
and the trunk was open, is that right?
yes.
And were there any car doors open?
I believe there were.
Do you know what car doors might have been open?
Not right offhand. I just couldn't say. Because that's been a couple years ago.
Directed to page 10, line 18. The individual that you saw standing by the trunk, could you describe him at all for me, what you saw?
About, I guess, pretty close to 6 foot tall. With a race, I couldn't tell you.
You don't whether he was black or white?
Whether he was colored or white, no. That I couldn't tell.
Do you know what kind of build he had?
Just medium build.
Did you see his head at all?
No, I didn't. I was busy driving, and then I didn't pay. I was looking, but I didn't. I couldn't detect that at all because, like I said, I couldn't state whether that were colored or white. That I couldn't say, and I didn't state that.
Did you just see him from the back?
Yes.
Did he appear to be a stocky man or thin or?
Well, I couldn't. I was rolling pretty fair and just couldn't detect that whether he was stocky or, exactly.
Do you know whether it was a man or a woman?
It was a man. But driving like that, it's at nighttime too, it's kind of hard to, in a place like that, to detect a thing like that.
Did they show you a picture of the car or show you the car itself?
Yes.
Or a car?
A car.
can you state with any degree of certainty whether the car that they showed you and this car that you saw parked along the road?
I would say it was.
Are you positive that it was, or was it simply a case where it looked similar?
I wouldn't say positive now because I say similar because that kind of be stretching it to say, just exactly positive.
Do you remember what kind of license plate the car you saw on the side of the road had?
No, I did not.
You didn't know whether it was an Illinois or Iowa license plate?
No.
So that's not something that you could use to determine whether the car that the police showed you is the same car or not.
I didn't notice the license plates. I did not.
Do you remember exactly what color the car was that you saw?
Red.
A reddish car?
Reddish, yes.
Was it a bright red or a darker red?
I say it's a medium reddish.
Do you remember anything else about the car? Do you remember anything about the taillights?
No, I don't.
Were the lights on the car when you first saw it?
I think the lights were on.
Does that include the headlights too?
I don't know.
After you drove by the car, did anything change about the car or its lights?
I don't know.
It was already dark at that time, wasn't it?
Yes.
And if I understand you correctly, you think it was, what time, 8:30 or so?
Between 8:15, 8:30, somewhere along there.
Are there any street lights in that area or anything of that nature?
Let's see. Now, wait a minute. I believe there's one. I think there's one on the corner. I'm not for sure. I live in that neighborhood too, but mostly I go the other way. I'm not going to say for sure because I'm not going to just stretch it because I want to be honest about it,
Certainly, Mr. Eston. So you don't remember whether there were any street lights or security lights anywhere in the area where that car was?
No.
Was it dark enough that any of those lights would have been on if there were?
Yes.
Direct you to page 15, line 10.
Now, was it a day or two after you had seen this occur, seen this happen, that the police officers came to you?
I couldn't just exactly state that because it's safe to say it's more than 2 or 3 days because I don't know just how long a period of time had elapsed before that they came down there because I was down on the bank fishing. And I wouldn't want to say,
Can you tell us, if you remember, what kind of actions the man at the car took? What did he do when you drove up?
He was just standing behind kind of moved over behind the car on the left side.
Okay. Did he turn and face you?
No.
Did he turn his face away from you?
Just kind of turned a little bit towards the trunk.
Okay. Towards the trunk would have been away from you?
No. Yes. It would have been away from me. Yes.
Okay. And the police officers then showed you a picture of a car?
Yes.
And they took you, I think, to probably a police garage?
Yes.
And they showed you a car?
Uh-huh.
What did you tell the police officers when you saw that car?
Well, I told them it looked like the one that I had seen that night.
Were you pretty sure that that was the car?
I was pretty sure, yes.
And that was just a few days after all this had happened?
That was after they came down and picked me up. I was down at the police.
All right. Now, as to it being dark out, was it pitch black or was the sun just going down? How dark was it?
No, it was pretty dark. It was pretty dark at that time.
Okay. And the car had its taillights on?
Yes.
You don't know whether or not it had its headlights on?
No, I'm going to say it had the headlights on or not.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't think. Mr. Walton, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, we are going to present to the jury Exhibit 505. That is the prior testimony of David Holden.
Exhibit 505 is in there.
It will be read by Davenport Police Officer Greg Lala.
And is this from the trial? Which trial?
It's 1995.
Thank you.
David Holden, called as a witness by the state, being first duly sworn by the court, was examined and testified as follows. Sergeant, would you pull that microphone to your chin, please? Tell us your full name, please.
David Holden,
Spell your last name.
Holden.
What's your occupation, sir?
I'm a sergeant with the Davenport Police Department.
How long have you been a police officer?
25 years.
All of that with the Davenport Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about your education, sir.
Graduated from high school in 1964. Went on to 2 years of college at a military academy in Lexington, Kentucky. I joined the Army, and then after that, I came here.
And how long after the Army did you become a police officer?
2 years.
And what are the ranks within the Davenport Police Department?
You start out as a patrolman, then corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, and chief.
There's one major
That's correct?
and one chief,
Correct?
and you are a sergeant.
Yes, sir.
September of 1990. What was your rank, sir?
Sergeant.
Do you remember being teamed up with FBI agent Jennings?
Yes, sir.
I take it that was a joint investigation into the death of Jennifer Lewis.
Yes, it was.
Many agencies were cooperating.
Correct.
Did you go to Rock Island at the Hillside Apartments with Mr. Jennings in September of 1990?
Yes, we did.
Do you recall what date that would have been?
The 19th,
And who drove?
Special Agent Jennings.
So you took his FBI car?
Yes.
Did you meet Mr. Liggins?
Yes, we did.
Did he agree to accompany you back to Davenport?
Yes, he did.
In fact, he signed every consent that you requested of him?
Yes, there were several.
Consent to search his apartment?
Yes.
Consent to search the car, which is State's Exhibit 86?
Yes,
And he also signed a waiver, right, to talk to you?
that's correct.
And did you and he have a discussion?
Yes, we did.
Did you conduct an interview, is the better way to put it?
Yes, I did.
Was Agent Jennings present?
Yes.
And where did that take place?
In the Davenport Police Department interview room,
How many interview rooms do you have?
3.
Could you tell the jury just how much was going on at the Davenport Police Department that date?
They were all busy.
A lot of action?
Yes.
All the agencies were working out of there?
Yes.
And what particular interview room or what place did you take Liggins?
It's called the lower interview room.
Any reason you took him there?
It is equipped for video and audio recording.
And also had the advantage of allowing Lieutenant Schaefer to monitor the interview?
Yes, from his office.
After you got done with the interview, what did you find out about the taping capabilities of that room?
It's inoperable. Didn't work.
Were you under the impression that it was being videotaped?
Yes.
Did you discuss with Stanley Liggins his whereabouts and the things that he did on September 17th, 1990?
Yes, I did.
Did he tell you what he did from his waking moments?
Yes.
Would you relate to the jury what he told you?
Certainly. He told me that he woke up in the morning, about mid-morning, the morning of the 17th. He stayed at his apartment until approximately 3 o'clock. He took a shower, got himself cleaned up. At 3 o'clock, he went to Tim Barber's house, picked up Tim, took him to Davenport where he picked up a check at what Liggins believed to be the Northwest Towers, and they went to another bank on West Kimberly.
Northwest Tower Bank. What was the name of the bank?
No, Northwest Bank.
There are 2 down there?
Yes.
And where is that particular building located?
On Kimberly Road, just west of Brady Street.
And in what city?
Davenport.
And then where did he go?
He went to a bank on East Kimberly Road where the check was cashed.
Tell you where he drove then?
Yes. Went to Casey's Bar over in Rock Island, over on 11th Street.
Did he tell you who was driving?
Yes, he was.
Did he tell you what he was driving?
He was driving a red Peugeot belonging to his girlfriend, Brenda Adams.
Having been on this investigation from the get-go, do you know that vehicle to be what is now, or a portion of, State's Exhibit 86?
Yes, that was it.
All right. Did he tell you what kind of place Casey's Bar was?
No.
Did he tell you what he did there?
Yes. They had a few beers apiece and played 5 or 6 games of pool.
Did he tell you how long he stayed there?
Until about 7:30, 5:30.
Tell you why he left?
Took Tim Barber back home.
Did he tell you why he did that?
Yes.
Did he tell you what he did after that?
He spent a few minutes at Barber's house, and he said from there he went to Ace and Sherry's house, arriving there at about 6 o'clock.
Did he tell you who was there when he arrived?
He said Ace was there, Sherry. He told me a black guy that he didn't know. I asked him to describe the black guy. He said medium build, 5'10", 180 pounds. Who else was there? He said Jennifer. He said she was wearing a dress, possibly a sundress that came below the knees.
Did you ask him to describe what she was wearing?
No.
He volunteered that.
Yes.
Did he tell you how long he was there?
He said approximately 40 to 45 minutes.
Did he tell you what he did there?
Yes. He said they spent some time in the living room. At about 6:30, he wanted some gum. He asked her if there was any gum in the house. After a short search by Sherry, no gum was found. He gave Jennifer $1 and sent her off for some gum.
Did he tell you what he did next?
Yes. He said he waited about 10 or 15 minutes and then got up and left. He said he was expecting a call at his apartment.
Did he say one way or another as to whether or not Jennifer had returned with the gum?
She had not.
Did he tell you where he went after he left?
Yes. Back to the Hillside Apartments, room 54.
And I believe you had advised us, he told you he went there for a reason?
He said he was expecting a phone call from his sister at 7 o'clock.
Did you ask him as to whether or not he got that call?
He said he didn't. He said he made 2 phone calls to his sister in Davenport. He said both times he got the answering machine and he does not speak to answering machines. He said so he hung up both times.
Did he mention any other telephone calls that he made from room 54 at that time?
Yes. He said at about 7:45 he called Ace and Sherry's house to see if Jennifer had returned.
That's what he said?
Yes.
Did he tell you what he learned?
He said that she had not come back yet, and he told Ace that he would come back to the house later that evening.
Did he tell you what he did next?
He said he drove back to Ace and Sherry's house at about 8:45 that evening. When he got there, he talked to Ace and Sherry, who said they had checked all of Jennifer's friends and were unable to locate her at this time, and he asked if the police had been notified. Liggins asked if the police had been notified. They said no. He advised them to contact the police at 911.
And then what did he do?
While Sherry was on the phone, Liggins said that he left and went back to the Hillside Apartments.
Did he tell you how long he stayed at the Hillside Apartments?
He said not long. He called his girlfriend to see if there was anything she needed. She said she wanted a pack of cigarettes, Benson and Hedges, and drove from the Hillside Apartments to a quick shop in Milan, picked up a pack of cigarettes, and arrived at Adams' house at about a few minutes before 10.
Did he tell you what he did once he got there?
He said he watched television, Arsenio Hall, and The Love Connection, and then went to bed in the bedroom. He said that Brenda and Sky, her 4-year-old daughter, spent the night on the couch in the living room.
Did you learn from him how many televisions there were in the house?
No.
Was there a further interview?
There were some consents that were signed. One was for personal body specimens. Jennings and I took him to the hospital where a lab tech withdrew some blood, and Corporal McCabe took some hair specimens, saliva specimens.
And did he do that willingly?
At some time during... Oh, yes, sorry.
At some time during the interview, did you ask him whether or not he had seen Jennifer anyplace other than the house?
Yes.
When was that? When did you ask him that?
It was during that time, before we went to the hospital, and he said that no, he had not seen her before. Between the time he left Tim Barber's house and the time he arrived at Ace and Sherry's house, he had not seen Jennifer.
Did you tell him that you had information to the contrary?
Yes.
What did you tell him?
We told him that we had witnesses that placed him in Rock Island talking to Jennifer before he arrived at Ace and Sherry's house. And he said no, that wasn't true. He did not go there. We talked to him several more minutes about this. Finally, he recanted and said that he had lied, that yes, he had seen Jennifer before he got there, but was afraid that if we found that out, that we would think of him as a suspect in Jennifer's disappearance.
Did you question him about a gas can?
Yes, we did.
What did you ask him?
We asked him about the gas can we found in the trunk of his vehicle. We asked him when the last time it was used. He said 4 or 5 months ago, prior to the interview, that he had run across 2 ladies that ran out of gas in Moline, and he had emptied the contents of his gas can into their vehicle. And I asked him if he put it all in, and he said, sure, I put it all in. There's always a little bit left. We asked him where he stored the gas can, if he ever stored it in the passenger compartment of the car. He said no, it's never there, that it was always in the trunk.
Did you ask him if Jennifer had ever been to his apartment?
Yes.
And what did he advise?
He said a couple of weeks prior to her disappearance that she had been to his apartment with Ace and Sherry, but it was only about 20 minutes in length.
Thank you, Sergeant. No further direct examination, Your Honor.
You cross-examine, counsel?
Going back to to what you were just asked about, did he specifically indicate to you whether she had been inside of his apartment or whether she had just been to his apartment?
I asked Liggins if she had ever been to his apartment before, and he said yes, once with her mother and father for about 20 minutes. That led me to believe that she had been in his apartment.
If Joseph and Sherry Glenn were to indicate that they and Jennifer and the baby Damien did go to Mr. Liggins' apartment, but that only those 3, excluding Jennifer, went inside, Jennifer never did, that would be just as consistent with what he said. She had been to his apartment.
Sure.
Now, as I understand, the lower interview room, as you described it, is specifically set up to do interviews, and it has both kinds of taping ability ordinarily. Is that right? You can do a videotape with audio and also do a separate audio tape only.
That's correct.
Now, you told us that there is no videotape without audio. There is no videotape without audio, is there?
There was no recording of any type, video or audio,
When did you discover that?
after the interview was complete.
Where was Mr. Liggins?
By that time, he was in the Scott County Jail.
Now, you've been at this for some 18, 20 years, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
Me too. Mr. Davis too, right?
Yes.
Now, way back before the VCR was in everybody's home, way back before there was mini cassettes or cassette recorders when you didn't have a videotape that you could watch or an audio tape that you could listen to of an interview, what did a thorough police officer do to preserve the words of the defendant?
I'm not sure what you're after. He made reports and put in quotes.
That's right. He made reports and put in quotes. And if you wanted to make sure that the quotes were the words of the person he had just interviewed, what did he do with that typed up report with quotes?
Sometimes the person would sign it.
If you could get him to sign it, that's what you wanted, isn't it?
Sure.
As a matter of fact, up until the modern days of video and audio tapes, the best thing you could have in a case was a signed confession, right?
Yes.
But on this tape, by the way, were you aware that this had been classified as a major case?
Certainly.
You work very closely with Lieutenant Schaefer, don't you?
Yes.
And you work very closely with all the personnel in the Detective Bureau.
Yes.
You work in every part of it, don't you?
Yes.
And so you were aware of the immediacy of the need for a thorough investigation in this case.
Certainly.
You were aware of many of the details of this case, correct?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, it was your knowledge of such details that caused you to focus in on certain parts of what Mr. Liggins said to you.
That's correct.
It's a technique that is used by interrogators, is it not? To keep some very special so-called facts and use those to pry out more if necessary.
That is a technique, yes.
And one of the things that you were aware of that evening, that Mrs. McCrae at Max Liquor had been interviewed.
Yes.
And you were aware that she had told the officers that she could even remember that the gum purchased by little Jennifer was Juicy Fruit. before?
I can't recall that, no.
The fact is that in a major case with the resources of the Rock Island Police Department, the FBI, the Davenport Police Department, you're telling us nobody checked the VCR, nobody checked any audio cassette recorders, and when you found out that they weren't working, you didn't even try to get Mr. Liggins to review and sign or initial a write-up of his interview with you. Is that right?
That's correct. There was no confession, sir. He would not have signed an ordinary police report.
Don't you think you would have signed an interview sheet if you thought it truly and accurately portrayed what it said?
I don't know that anybody has signed an interview that's just information.
If this was a case where you were trying to nail things down quite tightly, you didn't have video and audio, wouldn't you want to bind him in on some other way to what he said to you so there would be no mistakes? For instance, no confusion as to whether he called and tried to talk to Brenda twice as opposed to his sister twice.
Excuse me, Your Honor, is that a single question?
Probably not. I apologize. Let's assume for a moment that during this interview, Mr. Liggins were to have said that he attempted to reach Brenda Adams twice. You knew who she was by then, didn't you?
Yes.
To make sure that that was accurately preserved as opposed to calling his sister twice, you could have either been lucky enough for the tapes to work or signed something to that effect.
Or, like I did, I could have taken notes and from my notes prepared the report.
The room that Lieutenant Schaefer was in, is that where the video equipment is?
No, sir.
Let's go to the time that you and Mr. Liggins, or excuse me, Mr. Jennings, met with Mr. Liggins at the hillside. About what time of day was it?
Approximately 3:30.
PM?
That's correct.
And this would be on the 18th or the 19th?
19th.
The 19th of September. Had you called ahead to let him know you were coming?
No.
Did he greet you at the door of the apartment when you knocked?
Yes, he did.
The two of you identify yourself?
Yes.
Did you ask him who he was?
Yes.
And what did he tell you?
Stanley Liggins.
And from that time forward, he cooperated with you in giving you an interview and signing consents?
Yes, he did.
Now, as far as this consent goes, let's talk a little more detail about Mr. Liggins consented to for the search of his person. You've told us that he allowed the lab technician to withdraw blood, and then also allowed a police officer of the Davenport Police Department to collect other samples, right?
Yes.
He allowed the police officer to swab his mouth.
I believe so, yes. I was not in the room when this happened, but yes.
He allowed a police officer to pluck hair, head and pubic.
Correct.
That's yanked it out, right?
Yes. Plucked.
He allowed some to be cut.
Yes.
And as far as you know, he didn't refuse any kind of sample that anybody wanted.
No, he did not.
Did you have a chance to be in the room when you were having your initial conversation with him?
For a few minutes.
What was the status as far as tidiness?
It was neat.
How long after you were there was the room searched?
It was being searched as we left.
Did he know that?
Yes.
And so at least from the time that you arrived at the door or he had any idea that police officers were at his residence, he did not have the opportunity to change the appearance of his room or its contents.
No.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Walton, do you have any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down, Mr. Maloney.
They will call Thomas Perkins.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll have a seat right there. Make sure you state your name.
Please state your,
Sorry, go ahead when you're ready.
thank you, Your Honor. Please state your full name.
Thomas Allen Perkins,
Spell your last name, please.
Perkins,
What state do you reside in?
North Dakota.
Drive down.
I'm going to ask you just to slow down a little bit.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead.
Court reporter has to type everything down.
oh, okay.
So, just drove in yesterday?
Yes.
Long drive?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
What type of work do you do?
I'm a groundskeeper now.
I want to direct your attention to September of 1990. What type of work did you do at that time?
Roofing.
Did you work in the Rock Island, Illinois area,
Yes.
Quad Cities?
Yes.
When you worked in that area, did you typically stay at hotels?
Well, I was from there. I just stayed there because my boss was staying there.
What hotel did you typically stay at?
It was the Hillside Inn.
On the screen is State's Exhibit 5. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 5?
Yes.
And what is it?
The motel.
The Hillside Inn?
Yes.
Did you stay there on September 17th of 1990?
Yes.
Been a long time,
Yeah.
since 1990, is that correct?
Yes.
And how's your memory about the events of that day?
Not very well.
Not very good?
No.
You did testify in this case before, is that correct?
Yes.
That would have been in 1993.
Yes.
Memory a little better in 1993 than 25 years later?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 5, can you show us, there's really no good way to get this to you, but, and show the jury, but State's Exhibit 5, what room would have you been staying in on September 17th?
Down here.
Down by the stairway?
Yep.
On the right-hand side of the
Yeah.
picture?
Yep.
On September 17th, you worked that day,
Yes.
and you went back to the hillside to go to bed?
Yes.
Do you recall what time you would have gone to bed that night?
Probably around 10.
If you had testified previously that you went to bed at 10:30, does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Do you recall then getting up in the middle of the night?
Yes.
So now we're talking going to bed on the 17th at 10:30, now we're talking about early morning of the 18th, is that correct?
Yes.
What time did you get up on the 18th?
I think it was around 2 or 3. It was real early in the morning.
2 or 3 a.m.?
Yes.
Why did you get up?
To go get a soda out of the pop machine.
Did you do that then?
Yes.
Where was the pop machine?
On the other side, of the stairs right there.
The same stairs by your room or the other
Yeah.
stairs?
Same stairs. On the other side of it though.
So my pen, I'm pointing to the left of
Yeah,
the-
right about there.
Right
Yep.
in here?
Yep.
It's about 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. Did you see something at that time?
Someone just pulled in and got out of their car and went upstairs.
Do you recall what type of car that person was driving?
I couldn't tell you right now.
But they went upstairs.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what room they went to?
No.
You testified that, you in fact testified in this matter in 1993,
Yes.
and testified under oath at that time,
Yes.
and you told the truth at that time?
Yes.
I'm going to show you the transcript from the 1993 trial, page 686. and just have you read starting at line 24, and then go on to 687 to line 4.
Let's see, the court. State's exhibit, have you ever seen that car before?
Read it to yourself.
Let me know when you're done. Got a chance to read that?
Yes,
In 1993, you were able to identify a car in the courtroom,
yes,
State's Exhibit 86. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 86A. Do you recognize that?
yes,
And is that the car you identified in the courtroom in 1993?
yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to read into the record the prior testimony beginning at page 686, line 24, through 687, line 6, as previously sworn testimony.
Any objection?
I'm sorry, can you tell me the lines, page and line again?
Page 686, line 24, through 687, line 6.
No objection.
All right.
At this time, Mr. Perkins, I'm going to read the questions, and then you may read the answers out loud, okay? Starting at page 686, line 24. State's Exhibit 86, have you ever seen that car before? And your answer was,
Yes,
do you remember that car being towed away by the police?
yes,
How did they do that?
with the tow truck.
Mr. Perkins, do you at this time recall that as being the car that drove up
Yes,
at 3 a.m. at the hillside?
yes.
Were you reading that, or was that just your question?
That was my question. Mr. Perkins, as you sit here today, would you be able to identify the person who was driving that vehicle?
No, probably not.
Is the person that you saw driving that vehicle, do you recognize him in the courtroom?
I wouldn't recognize him if I just seen him on the street, but of course, I guess that's him.
You're just assuming today?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been so long, I couldn't tell you.
Did you identify the individual
Yes,
that you saw driving that car in 1993?
yes,
I want to direct your attention, you still have the transcript there, to page 689. Line, and have you just read to yourself line 17 to the bottom of the page into page 690 through line 2. Have you done that?
yes,
And is it correct
Yes.
that in 1993 you identified the individual who was driving that car?
yes.
Again, Your Honor, at this time I'd ask to read into the record transcript, page 689, line 16 through page 690, line 2 as prior sworn testimony.
Any objection? Any objection, Mr. Hallberger?
Actually, I think we are, Your Honor. I need to have a brief record, maybe.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to go to your jury room and keep the admonition in mind. Do not discuss the case, but continue to keep an open mind. We'll be back with you as soon as we can. Please rise for the jury. Please be seated. Mr. Hallberger?
Your Honor, at least in regard to the initial offer of the sworn testimony related that he saw the vehicle put on the tow truck, I didn't have an objection, even though I was still kind of fishing for the reason in my head how it came in, because I didn't worry about the content. But as I understand it, the prior statements that come in under Rule 5801 D sub 1 have some conditions preceding before they come in. And that rule says that that the prior statements by the witness sworn and at a trial can come in, and the statement is A, inconsistent with the declarant's testimony, which there's no argument here. He's adopting what he had said earlier and already has. Or B, consistent with the declarant's testimony and is offered to rebut an express or implied charge against the declarant of recent fabrication or improper influence or motive, not alleged here. Or C, one of identification of a person made after perceiving that person. And so, I guess that's the one that they may be hanging their hat on. But then if that's the case, then I think that the testimony would have to be more limited, and I need to ferret out what it means by identification after perceiving a person. But my point being is that it's not just it comes in because it was prior sworn testimony. One of those conditions preceding has to be met.
Mr. Walton?
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe under Rule .5801, B.
B or D?
D as in dog. A statement that meets the following conditions is not hearsay. 1A is inconsistent with the declarant's testimony and was given under penalty of perjury at a trial, hearing, or other proceeding or in a deposition. This is, he's not able to identify the defendant today, and so it is inconsistent. He did previously identify the defendant under testimony under penalty of perjury at a trial, so it fits under 5.801 D-A, and also C, identifies a person as someone the declarant perceived earlier. It's prior sworn testimony. They're even given an instruction that they can use prior testimony as if it was sworn testimony, as if it was given at trial, unlike impeachment evidence.
Can you read to me what you want to read into the record? I don't have a copy of that.
Yes, Your Honor. It's at page 689, line 17. Question, was somebody driving that car? Answer, yes. Question, is that individual who was driving that car here today? Answer, yes. Can you point him out for the jury, please? Answer, right there, pointing. Question, can you tell the jury where he's seated? Answer, he's seated right over there. On page 690, tell the jury what he's wearing. Answer: a black shirt. In addition, Your Honor, under Rule 5.804, exceptions to the rule against hearsay, criteria for being unavailable: the declarant is considered to be unavailable as a witness if the declarant under A3 testifies to not remembering the subject matter.
Anything else, Mr. Hallbaker?
Well, I guess it's a little bit of double dipping as it relates to the last reference to 804. We do have some witnesses that truly remember nothing, and I think it would apply. But I mean, in this case, they're bringing in a witness that has some memory of it, has already acknowledged that he had made those statements before, has already acknowledged that he's made an identification before. I'm not sure what the additional testimony adds, and I'm also still not sure. I mean, the inconsistent statements is not related to lack of memory. That's related to being able to use it for impeachment purposes. They have to follow it up, the rules under refreshing memory, which they've done. They've had him take a look at it, and he's adopted what he was said, but I don't think that gets the transcript in.
Well, it seems to me, Mr. Walton, and that's where I was headed with this, I don't believe that this is truly inconsistent testimony. I think the better and proper procedure is for you to show him those lines, ask him if that refreshes his recollection as to whether he identified an individual at the prior trial, and whether the individual at the prior trial that he identified was Mr. Liggins. I think you have to refresh his recollection when that comes back. I'm assuming that there's no dispute that who he identified at the prior trial was Mr. Liggins, is that correct?
Yes.
But I don't think you need to reread those questions and answers. Just use them to have him refresh his recollection. And then you can simply ask the questions.
I guess my only confusion, Your Honor, is the jury instruction that instructs the jury that they can treat prior sworn testimony as if it was given in court, if that's not made part of the record.
That, if you're talking about the impeachment instruction,
I don't think it's necessarily impeachment.
well, there is an instruction that says if a witness testifies inconsistently with what their testimony was under oath, they can consider that prior testimony as if given in court. But it does have, as I remember, inconsistency.
I did look at that issue, if I just have a minute.
Sure. And I don't think he's being inconsistent necessarily, it's just not remembering specifics.
I'm sorry.
I don't think he's being inconsistent, he's just not remembering specifics.
Okay, I think we'll modify the question.
All right. I think, because that statement, it does say inconsistent, so.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, we'll have to do that. Please be seated. Mr. Walton, will you continue?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins, I believe you had an opportunity to review your previous testimony from 1993 on page 689 and 690, is that correct?
Yes.
And at that time, in that testimony, you were asked to identify the individual you saw driving that car at 3 a.m. on the 18th. Is that correct?
Yes.
And were you able to do that in 1993?
Yes.
And did you identify the defendant, Stanley Liggins, in 1993?
Yes.
the individual who drove the Peugeot up to the Hillside Inn at 3 a.m.?
Yes,
About 3 a.m.
yes,
and went upstairs.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. I have no further questions. Mr. Hawbaker may.
Go ahead when you're ready.
May we approach?
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch break now. It's 11:45. We'll start again at 1 o'clock. Keep the admonition in mind again. Do not discuss the case and continue to keep an open mind. Please rise to the podium.